Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, well, we're looking at the fallout from just one football game. A really poorly timed one, actually. The Dallas Cowboys losing 27-17 to the Arizona Cardinals. And we're using that loss, kind of like a lens, to examine two totally different crises happening in the NFL.
Right, because this loss wasn't just, another L on the board. It felt like a real turning point. It set off some immediate high-stakes stuff for both teams.
Exactly. That defeat, it really became this focal point for Dallas. It exposed this crisis of desperation, right? Pushing them into scramble mode before the trade deadline.
Yeah, total scramble mode. But then for Arizona, the wild thing is winning that game actually created its own crisis, a crisis of success, believe it or not, something that really challenged their plans and commitments.
It's fascinating. So our mission today is to dig into how one single game can basically pull back the curtain on these deep organizational issues in two very different ways. The Cowboys, they're now 3-5-1 after 9 games. That leaves them, 3.5 games behind the Eagles, stuck way down at 11th in the NFC.
Yeah, not looking good. And the sources we're drawing on, they give you this really detailed look into the mindset in Dallas, especially with ownership facing that grim reality.
And then you contrast that with Arizona, where you've got this, undeniable statistical success that the management seems determined to just ignore.
We really have to start with Dallas and that grim reality, that cold, hard math. Because right after the loss, Jerry Jones, the Cowboys owner, he said something that just summed it all up.
Okay, let's unpack that. Section 1, Dallas, the panic, the trade deadline scramble, and just facing facts. What did Jones say?
Well, he admitted he was, being realistic about where this stood. His quote was almost kind of brutally honest. He said, "I do know how to add," meaning he can count the games left, figure out the wins needed, look at all the complicated ways the records have to fall just to even think about the playoffs. And that goal right now looks, let's just say, ambitious.
A really uphill climb.
It is. Especially when you remember that 2 teams ahead of them right now, the Bears and Panthers, they already lost to those teams earlier this season. That makes the math even worse.
So the margin for error is basically 0. What does the road ahead actually look like? Because their schedule, after the bye week and the Raiders game, it looks like a nightmare.
It's a total gauntlet. And this is where you really feel that desperation kicking in, The 5 teams right after the Raiders are the Eagles, Chiefs, Lions, Vikings, and Chargers.
Wow.
And when these sources were written, that group, they had a combined record of 26 wins and 16 losses.
Yes. Yeah, that's a tough slate.
It's brutal. The average opponent is just really strong.
And it's not just who they play, it's how packed the schedule is, right?
Yeah.
It's dense.
Yeah.
Those games against Philly, KC, and Detroit, all potential playoff teams, they're crammed into just 12 days.
Exactly. 12 days. There's no room to breathe, no time for mistakes. You drop one of those early ones and your season's trajectory could just, completely flatline.
Catastrophic, basically.
Yeah. It just forces this must-win mentality onto everyone. Like right now, Dak Prescott, the quarterback, he was really clear about it, said every game feels like a playoff game now.
They have to get a streak going, was his phrase, right? Or they fall further behind the 8 ball.
Yep. And that intense pressure, it directly impacts the decisions around the trade deadline.
Okay, and this is where we see Jones's thinking shift dramatically because of that Cardinals loss, right? There was a real flip-flop in what he was saying about trades. It shows the panic setting in almost hour by hour.
It's a huge shift. Earlier on the Monday, before the game, I think, Jones sounded pretty confident. He was on Sirius XM radio saying the Cowboys had a trade basically lined up, sounded like a done deal.
Right, like he was just waiting for the ink to dry.
Exactly. But then, after losing to Arizona, whole different story. He walked it back completely.
Yeah, right.
He went from having a deal in place to saying there's, quote, one I can do, and that he's leaning toward doing it. And he kept stressing how they need to make up a lot of ground.
The language totally changed. From confident acquisition to, desperate consideration of pulling an emergency lever.
You got it. And the need is obvious. Defense, they need help everywhere. Defensive line, linebackers, the secondary's been shaky. They were apparently talking to multiple teams about players at all those spots.
But here's the contradiction, right? Jones also put a limit on how big this potential deal could be.
Yeah, and that's the really critical part, the sort of organizational contradiction. He made it clear this deal, whatever it was, probably wouldn't be as big as, say, the Amari Cooper trade back in 2018.
Which really turned their season around back then.
Right. So Jones is saying, look, I won't get carried away, get illogical, and do something that was all betting on us winning the Super Bowl.
Okay.
He said he wants a player who will be active in the games, on the field, contribute right away, but he's capping the cost, the draft picks, the money, right when they arguably need a major fix to survive that schedule.
But doesn't that caveat, that not betting on the Super Bowl thing, doesn't that just signal he doesn't actually believe this team is worth a huge investment? I mean, if you're behind the 8 ball, schedule looks impossible. Yeah. Shouldn't you go all in if you want to save the season?
That's the tension, isn't it? It suggests maybe he thinks the cost of a really big fix is just too high for a team he sees as, I don't know, competitive maybe, but not truly elite. And look, when you see the struggles beyond just the defense, you get why they're desperate. Brian Schottenheimer, the coach, pointed out their first-team offense averaged only 13.5 points in the 2 games right before the deadline.
13.5 points.
Yeah.
And against the Cardinals, specifically the game that started all this, 5 sacks given up, 3 turnovers.
Yep. So Jones is wrestling with this big problem. Can a limited short-term fix actually solve anything when the whole season feels like it's spiraling?
It's quite the irony. Dallas is facing a crisis of, underperformance, forcing these kind of reactive but cautious moves.
Right. And meanwhile, Arizona is dealing with the complete opposite. A bizarre crisis of overperformance that's making the organization rigid.
Okay, perfect transition. Let's pivot from Dallas's gloom to Arizona's very strange success story in Section 2.
Sure.
This is where, you, the listener, can really see the stats creating chaos.
Yeah, backup QB Jacoby Brissett steps in, gets them their first win since way back in September, and suddenly the offense puts together its best 3-game stretch all year.
And the numbers, when you compare Brissett to the starter, Kyler Murray, they're just a little different, right? They basically scream the problem Arizona faces.
Oh, they're stark. Let's just look at basic production first.
Okay, give us the specifics from the sources.
Right. So with Brissett starting those 3 games, the offense averaged 25.7 points and 357 yards per game. That's a decent NFL offense.
Pretty good, yeah.
Now compare that to Murray's 5 starts, only 18.8 points and 288.4 yards per game.
Whoa, wait, that's almost 7 points and nearly 70 yards more per game just by switching QBs?
Yep. That's not just like a little tweak. That's a massive jump. That's the difference between an offense that's struggling and one that's actually working.
And the passing efficiency numbers paint an even clearer picture.
Even clearer. Brissett, in his 3 games, 256 passing yards per game, 7.7 yards per attempt, 6 touchdowns, only 1 interception.
Okay.
Murray, over 5 starts, 170 passing yards per game, just 6.0 yards per attempt, also 6 touchdowns, but with 3 interceptions.
So Brissett threw the same number of TDs in almost half the games with better efficiency. Wow. And the sources mentioned first downs too, right?
Yeah, Brissett got 44 passing first downs in just 3 games. Murray had 50, but over 5 games.
That's almost the same number in way fewer opportunities. That really speaks to how well Brissett was running the offense, moving the chains.
It goes beyond just the yardage totals. It's about situational football, too. Brissett was killing it on 3rd down.
How much better?
Arizona converted 56% of their 3rd downs with Brissett starting. With Murray, only 40%.
56%, that's huge.
Huge difference. Brissett was keeping drives alive, avoiding turnovers, getting them points. I mean, the statistical case is just, it's overwhelming. The offense simply functioned better with the backup.
Okay, the numbers are practically shouting one conclusion. So what does Coach Jonathan Gannon do? He's got this objective proof his backup is running a much more effective offense. But the starter, Kyler Murray, is getting healthy again.
Right, and this is where he has to face those organizational commitments we talked about, because despite all that data favoring Brissett, Gannon didn't budge.
What did he say?
He was really firm, kind of terse, actually. When asked about who's starting, he just said, nothing's changed. Murray starts when he's healthy, period. Murray had been out with a foot injury, by the way.
And when they pushed him, why stick with the guy the stats say is worse? Especially after seeing this kind of performance from Brissett.
He just shut it down, refused to elaborate, said the decision is, quote, just how I feel.
Just how I feel. That's not exactly data-driven analysis, is it?
No. And that quote right there, that's the core of the Cardinals' crisis. Is Gannon saying nothing's changed really about his gut feeling? Or is it, more about organizational politics? Protecting the massive investment, that $230 million contract, they gave their former number one pick.
Ah, right. The inertia.
Exactly. It's that institutional fear, maybe, of admitting a mistake or just making the payroll situation awkward. It shows how sometimes just keeping things stable internally can outweigh actually trying to win more games.
That refusal to adapt when the evidence is right there. It's really something. You've got clear numbers pointing one way,
Yeah.
and the coach seems to be choosing loyalty or maybe financial reality over performance.
And contrast Gannon's response with how Brissett himself handled all the attention. He was apparently incredibly humble about the whole thing.
Yeah, he basically deflected, right? Said something like, I don't think it's me.
Pretty much. He gave all the credit to the team, saying they were just finding ways to continue to get better and fix problems they had earlier in the season.
But the sources gave a hint why things clicked with him, didn't they? Something about communication.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr., the receiver, mentioned that Brissett is just really good at communicating his likes and dislikes to coaches, to teammates,
Okay.
which suggests it's maybe less about just raw talent and more about, operational smoothness. A QB who can clearly say, this works, let's do more of this, or this isn't working, let's change it. Maybe that clarity wasn't there as much with Murray.
Interesting. So we've got these two clear conflicts. Dallas, failure forces Jones to act, but act conservatively because maybe he doesn't fully believe.
Right.
Arizona, surprising success gets ignored because it messes with the org chart and the big contract.
Right. And if you zoom out, you see these two, perfect case studies in failure to adapt. Dallas is under pressure, making these limited moves a potentially small trade that might not actually fix their huge fundamental problems.
Well, Arizona is just refusing to change course, even when the evidence for doing so is staring them in the face. They're prioritizing, I guess, institutional stability over actually winning.
Which brings us to that final critical question, especially for Dallas. Jones said he wouldn't get carried away, wouldn't go all betting on us winning the Super Bowl with a trade.
Yeah.
But given that absolutely brutal schedule ahead, those 5 opponents, 26-16 combined record, and knowing they need help basically everywhere on defense, line, linebacker, secondary.
How does a small fix possibly work?
Hmm.
How does that cautious, pragmatic approach square with the reality they're facing?
If the team really is in now or never mode, like Dak Prescott said, what's the real cost of making a trade that's just too small?
You risk giving up assets, draft picks, cap space, for what? Marginal improvement. And you still miss the playoffs anyway.
Exactly. Jones is limiting the move because he thinks they aren't Super Bowl contenders. But taking that conservative path almost guarantees they won't even get a chance to prove him wrong.
Especially with that 12-day stretch against 3 top teams looming.
That's the tightrope he's walking. A moderate trade in November might just evaporate against that level of competition. Is he being a rational manager, or is he failing to take the necessary risk to save a season that's clearly imploding?
That's the choice that one loss to the Cardinals really forced upon him.
A lot of ground for Dallas to make up, indeed. And a lot of awkward questions for Arizona to keep ignoring.
Well, that's our deep dive for today. Plenty to think about there regarding organizational responses to pressure and success. Go analyze your own spreadsheets, maybe? We'll talk to you next time.